Okay, so today's lesson is on factoring the greatest common factor. So yesterday we found the greatest common factor. Today we are factoring the greatest common factor. So what is factoring? You guys know the distributive property already, right? How would I distribute that? You would multiply 2 times x plus 2 times 4. Yes? Are we familiar with this? Maybe? Not really? You're giving me the glazed over. Where you're like, that's the glazed over look. Exactly. You must engage in the lesson. Okay, so this is distributing. The opposite of distributing is factoring. So if they give me 2x plus 8 and ask me to factor, I'm going to take out what they have in common, and then I'm going to leave what I have left.
Oh.
So it's doing the exact opposite. Okay. So 2 was in 2x, and 2 goes into 8. So I can bring 2 out front, and then I divide each one by that number. So 2x divided by 2 is x. 8 divided by 2 is 4. Which is why I wrote 4 right there. Good? Okay, now we're going to put letters instead of numbers. Woohoo. So we're going to factor 2ax plus 2ac. What do these two have in common? What's the greatest common factor? Well, they both have the number 2 in common. They both have the letter A. Sorry, there's just like annoying noises. Watch.
I like it.
Like the zipper noise. Like we can make a whole like band out of this. You got the tap, you got the zipper noise, you got the Okay, so they both have A in common. So A comes out. Now what am I left with? This one is left with x plus c. Now the trick is that if you multiply it back out, you should get the original thing you started with. Simple enough. Also trick, if you bring everything in one of the terms out, do you just put 0 there? No, you put 1 because you have to be able to re-multiply it out. So like if this was 2x plus 2ac, then I would have 1 plus c there because I took out this entire term. But I have to be able to return to what I had originally. So let us move on, like a cow would move on. So we have a cubed x squared m squared plus a squared x m cubed minus a to the fourth x cubed m squared. So let's look at what each of these have in common. How many a's do they have in common?
3.
So we have 3, 2, and 4. So the answer is, how many a's do they have in common?
9.
2. You always pick the lowest number. So there are 2 a's in common. Now let's look at the x's. We have x squared, we have x to the 1, and we have x cubed. How many x's do they have in common?
3. 1.
It's always the lowest number.
1.
2. X 1.
We have 2, 1, and 3. Lowest number?
3.
Lowest?
1.
1.
1. Number 1.
Okay. Now in your mind, think of how many we have in common here. We have m squared, we have m cubed, and we have m squared. Don't say it. How many do they have in common? Everybody?
1.
2.
Cube.
So we have 2, we have 3, and we have 2.
1.
It's always the lowest number.
1.
What is the lowest number between 2, 3, and 2?
1.
There's no 1 to choose from. It's either 2, 3, or 2. What's the lowest number?
2.5.
2.
The lowest number is 2. Boom! Alright, so
Really convincing.
I have pulled all of those out. What am I left with? This one, if I took 2 A's out, how many are left? 3 minus 2 is? Oh dear. 3 minus 2 is? 1. I have x squared. I took one of them out. How many x's do I have?
1.
1. Excellent. I had m squared. I took 2 m's out. I have 0. So I'm going to move on. Plus, I have a squared. I took a squared out. I have nothing. I had x. I took out x. I have nothing. I had m cubed. I took out m squared. I'm left with
1.
m to the first power. Minus a to the fourth. Took out a squared. I'm left with a squared. I had x cubed. I took out 1. I have x squared. I had m squared. I took out m squared. I have nothing. So this is the factored form of that. So you have to find the greatest common factor, then you pull it out of each term. All right, last thing we are going to do is canceling. So we are going to cancel something like this. What can cancel from the top and bottom?
4.
4. Why? Because everything is being multiplied that we're considering. Right? It's 4 times this thing divided by 4. So it's all multiplication and division. So I can cancel these. Can I cancel 4 here? Can I just do that?
No.
No, because the top is not all multiplication, right? There's this subtraction in the middle. This is the same problem as this one. Okay? But in order to cancel, I must factor first. So what's the greatest common factor of 4a and 12? 4 goes into 4a and 4 goes into 12. What am I left with if I take 4 out? Of 4a. If 4 comes out, what am I left with? A. Minus, if 4 comes out of 12, what am I left with? So you're going to divide. Okay? This is all over 4. So now I cancel and I get a minus 3. Okay? So when you factor, good question. You divide. Okay, let us try this one. We'll do it over here. This is terribly organized. Can I just cancel 3x and 3x? No. Because it has to be multiplied like this.
Oh, right.
Okay? If you have subtraction here, you can't. So I must do what first? I must factor. What will I factor? What does 3 and 9 have in common?
3.
What does x and x squared have in common?
Nothing.
X to the first, right? You take the lowest power, and that's the one that they have in common. What am I left with? If I take 3 out and I take x out, I'm left with,
X cubed.
so I've taken this whole thing out. Am I left with 0 or am I left with 1? 1, because 3x times 1 is 3x.
Oh.
Sit up straight. Like when you're like laying on your face, you're like already mostly asleep. Like you gotta be like, remember yesterday in creative writing, I came to class and I sat there and I was like, I was attentive and ready. Yeah, I was in there. Yeah, that's it. I was attentive. I was ready to go. Because you're postured to be attentive. You're like you're already gone. Like you're learning nothing. So, anyways, let's proceed. Sit up, please. Sit up. There you go. Okay. Okay, minus If I take 3x out, what am I left with? If I take 3 out of 9, I get 3, because 3 times 3 is 9. If I take x out of x squared, what am I left with?
Negative x.
X. Why? Because x times x is
X.
x squared. I'm going to divide that whole thing by 3x. Now I can cancel because this is multiplied by the rest. And the answer is 1 minus 3x. It'll take some getting used to, I know. But you guys got this. On a scale of